the owner of the Commanders, Josh Harris, was on a podcast with Alex Rodriguez. The name of this podcast, I got to find it. Do you remember it, Darius? The Deal. Sounds like a business podcast, maybe, or a bunch of people that have a lot of money get together to talk about having a lot of money and how they got their money. It's on Bloomberg, if that tells you anything.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
It's like a businessy thing. But I listened to some of this, and it was really compelling because, let's face it, how much have we heard Josh Harris talk about the stadium deal? We had the press conference where he answered a couple of questions, and he had some prepared comments, which was nice. But this was the first back-and-forth Q&A about this deal and a lot of his thoughts on how it's going to go down. And I've not heard this audio played on the station, and I wanted to get into some of this so we can react to this now. But have you heard any of this interview that he did with A-Rod?
Just a little, to borrow from our friend Fred Smoot, schniblet of it here and there. I have not heard the extended. I want to.
So let's play through some of these clips, and we can start and stop them as need be. Let's start with Harris one. This is on how important it is to return to the RFK site for this ownership group, for this fan base, and maybe even for the city of D.C.
Well, it's seismic, I think, for the city, for the DMV, for D.C. D.C. is obviously an incredibly important city. And, I grew up there. I grew up in Chevy Chase, Maryland. And to be able to bring football back to RFK Stadium, the spiritual home of Washington football, of the Commanders, and, build a next-generation world-class venue. I mean, obviously, venues are advancing, the technology is advancing, the fan experience is advancing, and then it's not just a football venue. We're gonna put a dome on it. We're gonna make it about football, but we still put a dome on it. It's very important to the city that they be able to host massive events like the Super Bowl. Maybe we're not gonna push Roger on that, but whatever, Beyonce, pick an event. And D.C. obviously is a gateway city for the United States, so it'll make D.C. great and proud. And then not only that, it's a $2.7 billion stadium, but it's a $3.8 billion, including all the stuff that's going to happen with the infrastructure and everything. And then there's the stadium itself is about 15% of the overall ground. I don't know if you've ever been down there, but of course. You got the Capitol and the monument. You can see it. You got the Anacostia River. And then it's a 15-minute bike ride to Nationals Park, the Navy Yard. So you're going to redevelop a lot of neighborhoods with D.C., affordable housing. You have a whole bunch of parks. And then, retail, mixed use. And so you're going to really change those areas in a really positive way. And DC's had an amazing. They've done this in the past, so it's incredible actually, and really exciting to be able to engage with the city and help the city.
So that's a good launching point there with him just talking about the project. But what I got out of that answer, at least the initial part of it, Danny, was my argument I keep making, which is, and I know this does not hold up in court. We're talking about Washington D.C. We should be able to have a world-class stadium, which we don't right now. We're talking about Washington, D.C. We should not be left out of the World Cup. The number one TV market every 4 years for the World Cup, D.C., should not be told you can't host a game because your stadium, which isn't even in the city, by the way, is not good enough. We don't feel good putting a game there right now. It's a rundown, mediocre joint.
Right.
You can't have the people safe and comfortable in that dump so you don't get a World Cup game. But if you want to travel up to Philly, you could do that. Shouldn't be. In Washington, D.C., the most powerful city in the world, we should not have a situation where Taylor Swift says, I'm doing 23 cities. D.C.'s not going to be one of them because we're not going to that place in Landover. That's a thing. That's a reality. The Beyonce concert that was last in Landover, go back and see all the news stories about the lines in and out and some of the stories that night. There's a good chance she wouldn't go back to that stadium based on all the complaints and the problems. We shouldn't miss out on things in this city. This is not Wyoming, some random town, Cheyenne, or I don't know. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
Give me a break, man. We're DC, so you should have a world-class stadium. And I know that's not the beginning and the end of the conversation, but I got a little bit of that tone from Harris there.
Well, but to me, it's the most compelling. So economists and really people smarter than me will disagree forever about the outright financial benefits. In other words, if I tell you, Grant, you give me $5 today, you're going to get $7.50 in in 2 weeks. Whether that's true or not is maybe up for debate. Reasonable minds, I think, can disagree. I don't think it's a great pure cost benefit analysis in terms of like a win and loss for the local economy. But what I do think is that the point is it's now the showcase where it is as currently a blight. The whole point of this is when the World Cup comes, when this televised event comes, it's the advertisement. It's the best foot forward for the city, and it needs to happen because of that. More so, again, than if we spend $1.1 billion, will we make our $1.1 billion back based on the Final Four being here? The answer is probably not. But over the long haul, or at least for me, it's probably not. But over the long haul, there's a reason people want to come see the Smithsonian. There's a reason people want to go look at the Capitol and the Washington Monument and all the memorials and all the different beautiful things that are hallmarks of DC, every school trip. So you go beyond just the school trip, and it becomes a place that everybody has to go and wants to come see because look what else we can do. We don't have a look what else right now.
Yeah.
Get the look what else, and this is your gateway for it.
Charles Allen will disagree with me. Brianna Nadeau, I'm not sure of her exact name. She would disagree with me. But if there's not a venue where you can host a World Cup game, you're not doing your job in this city as a member of the city council. Like, that's how I feel about this. Mm-hmm. If there's not a place in DC where we can host the biggest performers in the world to come and do a stadium-sized show that is too big for an arena, then you're doing it wrong. Go back to the drawing board and figure out another plan for your city. In this city, in a top 7 media market, it's been as high as 6 and as low as 8 or whatever it is now. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I know it's Washington, D.C. I know that's what I know. You got to be able to have that. All right, let's go to Harris 2 here on Maryland's role in deciding to move to D.C., talking about Westmore and the battle to try to keep the team.
Okay, so we play in Maryland today. The team has played in Maryland since the 90s, like the late 90s. And, you know, obviously the DMV is D.C., Maryland, Virginia. D.C.'s in the middle, right? So RFK is in the middle. So Maryland, right, for Virginia fans, a little further. But we play in Maryland. And so the first thing we had to do is assure all through the process Governor Moore, who really cares about Landover.
The governor of Maryland.
The governor of Maryland. You know, he wanted to make sure that, you know, we said to him, look, we have to consider DC because it's the spiritual home of the Commanders. And he said, look, I'm willing to let you consider that and be generous about allowing you to have some options, but you need to convince me that you're gonna, you know, build something in Maryland if you decide to leave. And so we concluded a deal with the governor, and that allowed for the project the land to be transferred to DC. So I don't know if you remember, but as the last Congress was sunsetting, we got 100-0 vote in the Senate.
Yes,
which moved the land to DC. So until the land was under federal control, until the land was under DC control, and then it wasn't possible to build a stadium.
That's Harris on the Maryland part of this. Now, he suggested that they would build something at that site according to, you know, basically the demands of Westmore. Mm-hmm. All I've ever heard is that they would take care of detonating and moving that stadium on, basically, that they would take it down, that it's not going to be a blight. It's not going to sit there like RFK. I've never heard that they're then going to pay to build something there.
That was interesting to me. So that's the part I pulled out as well. Because they own the team owns that land.
Right.
Okay. So
and they would give it to Maryland, I guess.
Again, that's the question. So in general, there are exceptions, but in general, if I own land and I'm going to move somewhere else, local government, it's none of your business what I do with it. But maybe there's a trade there. Maybe there's something that's a bigger part for it. Like, I'll allow you to go shopping even though your lease hasn't expired or this or that, without fret, if you promise to do something with that ground once you're done with it. Maybe that's what he's implying. But even still, that's something I hadn't heard to this point.
Because I don't get the sense they're going to help build anything there. They don't care about that land when they leave.
Right.
They just had to agree, best we could tell so far, that if Maryland wants to build something there, they're going to be able to, because there's not going to be a stadium, mm-hmm. and it's going to be leveled and the dirt's going to be ready to dug into when they're done. I think it's within a year after they're done.
Yeah, whether it's selling the land to the state or whether it's keeping the land, destroying the stadium, you know, laying flat ground and letting a developer come in and put whatever you want there, whether it's a sportsplex or a million things for local residents or retail, the mixed use, the same type of stuff you're going to put in downtown DC. I have no idea what the deal is there, but I hadn't heard any of that where Wes Moore was like, yeah, you can go ahead and look around. That was interesting to me. Like it makes sense that that's part of it, but
they were under the lease. So do you need permission from him legally to start talking to DC? I wouldn't think
I don't think you would, looking for your next place you want to do something. I don't, but even
but
still,
I wonder in the terms of a contract, and I'm with you, I don't think this would be the case, but could you do that 6 years before the end of the lease as opposed to 2?
With you should have to pay something to get out early from a lease like that. But even still, you're basically saying his point there just sounds like, again, summarizing, Wes Moore's been a great partner, and he's still not holding our feet to the fire, not making it miserable for us, giving us ultimatums and deadlines, going, if you don't tell me right within 5 minutes, I'm just making this up. You don't tell me by June 1st that $400 million we were going to spend goes away. He's not doing anything. He's not playing any hardball at all. I think maybe there's an exchange there we're not thinking of. Maybe some of the offices that moved into the PG County for the team, whether it's season ticket sales and some of those things, maybe stay there. I mean, that's part of the negotiation as well, probably.
Well, there's also this. There's no reason if you're Wes Moore, you've known all along they want to be in DC. They don't want to be there.
Right.
So it's almost like somebody wants a divorce and you're just telling them, no, I'm not signing the papers. Where does that really get you?
Right.
Neither of you are going to be happy that this is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of it is he just watched what happened with DC and Virginia, where Ted Leonsis really wanted to go to Virginia, was pretty hell-bent on doing it. That fell through. They come back to DC and they're able to salvage it. Well, if you go scorched earth or really are a pain in the butt as they're trying to get to DC,
good point, Grant.
What is the benefit to that?
Yeah, there's no upside.
All I got to do is sit here and wait with my $400 million and let the DC City Council screw it up.
Yeah, let local politics at play itself. Yeah.
I mean, because it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's, let Mendelson and Allen and Nedu and, all of them get their hands on this thing. And next thing you know, maybe Josh Harris comes back to me with his tail between his legs going, hey, that $400 million.
Is that still on the table?
You still got that over there? Let's go to, this is Harris 3 on, this is interesting because we've always talked about this. Everybody knew they wanted to be in DC. And he went into essentially the history of them knowing that they needed to be at this site.
From there, we went into, we had negotiations going with a lot of different parties, and, we're blessed that everyone wants the Commanders, and ultimately concluded a deal with the mayor that would be highly beneficial for DC, and at $2.7 billion, which is what we're putting up. It's the largest investment in DC ever. So it's the largest investment in DC's history. And so once the mayor decided that it was okay, we signed a term sheet with the mayor, and now we're working with the DC City Council, who, the project has incredible ROI for DC, literally billions of tax revenues, thousands of homes, and thousands of jobs, right? And
affordable homes.
And of that, 30% are by agreement going to be, at least that will be affordable homes. And so it's going to raise the standard. And then you get an amazing entertainment district. And who's not going to play in a new stadium with the backdrop being literally the Capitol, right? And then you get the redevelopment on the Anacostia River. So this is going to change DC. And so I'm hopeful that the council's doing its work. A number of them are already supporting that, but we have some work to do. So now the next step for us is to obviously get the council's vote. You've got to tell the citizens and the politicians, why this is good for the city, why they should invest their money in this. And the reality is DC is going through a harder time right now. And we were very sensitive to that and made sure that this deal was very good for DC. But I'm also focused on making it a place where our opponents fear to come, which is how I grew up, and where our fans love to come.
Yeah.
And, our RFK, right, was, it was an incredible arena. The stands would shake, and it was a smaller arena, but it was loud, and, people showed up.
Josh Harris on a podcast with Alex Rodriguez and a co-host We're going through some of his answers here. So a few things there, but where do you want to start?
Working with the council now. So one of the gripes.
How about him saying we got work to do?
Yeah,
that tells you they might not have the votes right now.
Totally. One of the frustrations that a couple members of the council shared with us was they haven't seen any details. They don't know anything yet. This is part of a larger budget that hasn't been submitted. And by the way, it now seems that it has been submitted, and a lot of politics are happening around that. And sort of the stadium part is on the back burner. But they're doing their own normal stuff, which is outside of our pay grade. We're football guys. But that point is sign the term sheet with the mayor, and now almost as if to say, and now the real work begins, trying to satisfy everybody's quadrant or ward or at-large concern.
But they're 6 weeks away from this deadline.
Yeah.
So if quote unquote now the work begins, and maybe you could say that the work began a month ago or whatever. They've been meeting with these council members, although it doesn't sound like they got the budget until the last several days here. And that's only 6 weeks. That deadline's not realistic then, I don't think, to get this thing actually agreed upon. Mid-July?
Yeah.
If right now they don't have the votes and they're trying to get them, there's no way you do that in 6 weeks.
I mean, maybe you go, all it takes is one meeting with, we had Robert White in studio, one of the council members at large. Really nice guy. I was pretty impressed with him. Whether you agree or disagree, maybe he goes, hey, here's what I need. I'm just making this up. If you have the team offices in DC and we get $1.50 from every car for the first 10 years for this parking garage that we're going to build for you, I'll sign. Cool. Boom. Put that in. And then you get one other person, mental center, whoever, who's a maybe. You're not getting a couple.
So to that point,
and then you're done.
Then do you think this is a deal that is being negotiated? I believe that this deal is being dropped on the desk and saying, what do you think?
Interesting.
I don't view it as like they want to now go council member by council member and make a bunch of concessions. In their mind, and you heard Harris say this, and I actually think this is reality, I think they've done a lot in terms of this ownership group. They're putting up $2.7 billion. He said, we were very much aware of the hard time DC is having, and we thought about that in our commitment. I mean, in just talking to enough people around the organization, I think the thinking is they feel like, they're taking on a lot of risk just as an ownership group, more so than vast majority of owners do, paying for 76% of this thing, and that they've given the city a really good deal. Now, not everyone on the city council, including White, who you just mentioned, who sat here, feels that way, but that's how the owners feel. So do they want to then keep giving more and more and more? That might be what it takes, but I don't think this was the first offer. I think this was here's your stadium deal, and by the way,
the offer expires. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so and also again the politics of it, which you and I are clearly experts in, but it is, again, as to remind folks, it's part of the mayor's budget, right? So that's money for the fire station, that's money for this program, cutting this, adding that, whatever the expenditures are, and one of the paragraphs or two line items or however you want to phrase it is this stadium deal. So if it gets voted on or not, or rejected or not, I don't know how much red tape, and then I turn a red pen, and I X out this, and I want to make that number bigger or smaller. I don't know how much of that there is with this part of the process. I just don't.